Okay, thank you so much, Chair. I will hand over to Harry.
Good morning, Chair, and the members of the committee. The introduction has been already laid by Commissioner Doris, so I'm going to skip some of it. But briefly, I'd like to talk about the brief introduction. The purpose of the study was to obtain the levels and trends of concentration of various sectors, along with the participation of micro, small, and medium enterprises. And the second one is to aid sector-specific targeted initiatives. And the third is to aid prioritization and decision-making across government to address concentration and promote participation. So the key indicators that we have considered in the study is the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, known as HHIs, which analyzes the turnover shares across all firms in a given sector. The number two is the concentration ratios. Either we take 3 firms or 5 firms. We call it as a CR3 or CR5, which measures the combined turnover share of 3 or 5 largest firms in a given sector. And for participation, we have looked into the firm entry, exit, firm retention, and firm size transition and growth, Gini coefficient, and turnover share. To give you a brief background of the kind of data that we have looked into comes from the National Treasury source data, and they have 5-digit level data. We could only work with digit 1 and digit 3. The more you move towards the higher levels of disaggregation, the data becomes more revealing and the firms could be identified. And any subsector which has less than 10 number of firms, we wouldn't be able to work with that kind of a data because it's just revealing their identity. So because of that restrictions, we have worked only with digit 1 and digit 3, and you can see the difference that can be seen from each digits. For example, if you look at digit 5, you can straight in agriculture, broad sector, we can look into rice, growing of rice in particular. But if you move above, it becomes more aggregated, growing of cereals, legumes and oil seeds. If you come to 3, it becomes non-permanent crops and so on and so forth. But there are restrictions that we had to work with. So we worked with digit 1 and digit 3. So this is the share of subsectors where the top 3 firms have more than 40% market share. And if you look at the subsectors here, we've looked into the digit 1. The top is the electricity, gas, and water. Around 67% of the firms which have more than 40% market share in that subsector, and those subsectors can be identified, which is electricity generation, distribution, gas manufacturing, waste management, and the and the material recovery. And if you look at the manufacturing, it's a similar picture. 67% of the firms, at least where the top 3 firms have 40% or above market share. And those subsectors are agriculture processing of fish and grains, petroleum refineries, chemicals, and mineral processing, electronics, including consumer, computer, communication equipment, domestic appliances, batteries, glass, and transport equipment. And transport and storage ICT has 54% of such large 3 firms. And wireless satellite communication, television programming, broadcasting. And in terms of the transport, we have sea, air, rail, pipeline, and inland water transport. So if you look at this picture, you have at least mining and above will have more than 50% of the subsectors are highly concentrated, just in terms of concentration ratio 3, where large 3 firms would have more than 40% of the market shares. At the bottom, we have construction, then the wholesale sector, retail, catering, accommodation, and so on and so forth. But largely, over 50% of the subsectors within electricity, manufacturing, transport, and mining are some of the most concentrated subsectors we have. And even though we have highly concentrated subsectors, which is largely from the apartheid era, we still have some reduced, approximately 5 percentage points reduction in the concentration, with 10 subsectors transitioning from high to moderately concentrated level. Concentration is reducing within each category, with around 2/3 of highly concentrated subsectors and almost 3/4 of moderately concentrated subsectors seeing some decline, although not enough to move down to moderate and less concentrated levels. Most progress in deconcentration is in markets characterized by multiple competing firms or oligopoly markets where you have a couple of number of firms rather than where a single dominant firm exists. Dominant firms can more easily engage in exclusionary practices that prevent rivals from growing and challenging them, whereas in oligopoly markets, we have a few large firms capable of challenging each other and to enhance competition. So if you look at this table, at the three-digit level, we have identified the sectors and the number of subsectors within each category. Say, for instance, agriculture has 13 subsectors. Catering and accommodation has 6, community, social, and personal services has 22 subsectors, and likewise. Manufacturing has got the largest number of subsectors with 71 subsectors there. And we have measured the HHI based on the USDOJ measure. From 0 to 1,000 is the highly concentrated concentrated subsectors. Moderate is 1,000 to 1,800. And anything above 1,800 is highly concentrated subsectors. So based on that, we have looked into all of the subsectors and we have seen, compared from 2017 to 2021, there are some subsectors which were classified as highly concentrated, now have become, a couple of them have become moderately concentrated. And although some sectors have not seen any changes, but that at least by the 5 percentage points, largely there is some kind of deconcentration just in terms of this category. Concentration observation at a subsector level, we have seen in agriculture that concentration is declining largely across most subsectors. However, concentration remains high in silviculture, forestry, and non-wood forest products. Within manufacturing, we have high and raising levels of concentration in grain, fish processing, refined petroleum, batteries, accumulators. And in retail, motor trade, and repair, mostly low concentration, but concentration still there in the non-specified retail stores, specialized retail stores. Under construction, we have seen low concentration, reliance on subcontracting further have lowered the entry barriers. Transport and storage, dominated by largely regulated monopolies. Rail, pipeline, postal services show at least the concentration ratio in terms of 3 largest firms consistently above 80%, which is quite alarming. ICT, declining concentration, still high in broadcasting and satellite telecoms. Electricity, gas, and water, high in power generation, transmission, and distribution. Among mining, we have concentrated subsectors in iron ore, natural gas, and lignite, which are largely capital-intensive subsectors. Community and personal services, concentration concerns are in hospitals, gambling, betting, and higher education. And finance and real estate, catering and accommodation, and wholesale largely have shown less concentration, though finer 4 to 5 digit analysis could have revealed much more than what we have undertaken in the study. MSME participation in the economy remains very low compared to the global standards, and it is a setback by the COVID. While MSMEs make up 97% of the tax-registered businesses, they account for only 22% of the turnover in 2021, compared to over 50% for OECD countries. And this is due to 80% of all small businesses are micro-sized, with only 13% small and just over 4% are medium-sized firms, suggesting a missing middle in the medium-sized firms. And it is easier to enter than expand in the economy. That is largely one of the findings that we have. So in the table, we have identified this firm size category in terms of number of firms, the turnover share compared between 2017 and 2021. Large firms, although they represent only 3% in terms of number of firms, they control 76% of the turnover. And this has increased to 78% in 2021. And when you look at the other category, MSMEs, the remaining, but it has reduced by a couple of percentages between these 2 years. And this slide shows the top 10% turnover share compared to the bottom 50% between 2017 and 2021. If you look at the bottom, which suggests all firms, top 10% control 90.5% of the turnover compared to all firms. The bottom 50%, which is not even 1%, irrespective of whether you consider 2017 or 2021. In fact, 2021 has shown even reduced turnover share for bottom 50%. And you can see the similar analysis for each of the subsectors that we have looked into. This situation has not changed significantly. Challenges of growing participation. Again, we have looked into the revenue share, the employment share between MSMEs and the large firms. On an average, in terms of employment, 43% are still housed in MSMEs and 57% by the large firms. And between 2017 and 2024, if you look into that, participation of employment in MSMEs have increased from 43 to 44 in 2021. But you can identify some of the subsectors. Say, for instance, construction has 75% of the employment in MSME sector. And similarly, catering, accommodation, and other trade has 60%, and so on and so forth. But on an average, if you look at 44% of the employment are still housed in MSMEs, although they contribute only 22% of the turnover share. This slide we look into is the entry and exit rates. MSME exit rates have gradually climbed, even overtook the entry rate in 2020, the first year of COVID. And if you look at all firms, we have entry and exit rates. For 2020, for instance, it's 10 and 12%. But if you look at the same entry and exit rates for MSMEs, it's 10 and 12%. And exit rates are quite bigger than entry rates. And for large firms, it stays quite consistent between 2 and 3%. And this is the retention of firms. If you look at, what we do in this graph is to hold the number of firms in 2017 and see whether they survive by 2021 or 2020. That's the data time we looked into. And you look at the large firms, they've shown a sharp increase in the rate from 9,700 odd number of firms to 10,550. But if you look at the MSMEs, there is a significant reduction from 341,000 odd firms to 277. Around 60,000 firms have exited from 2017 until 2020. Around 19 to 20% of the MSME firms have exited from the market. This slide, we explain the transition metrics of firms. We look at 2017, say, for instance, this left side of the table, we have 2017 firm size categories, and we compare them what have been their position in 2018. And similarly, the other side of the table, we hold 2020 firm size category and compare what has happened in 2021 in terms of their size. And the transition rate of small to medium and medium to large annually is well below the entry rate of firms into the economy. While it may be easier to enter the economy, there are considerable barriers to expansion in becoming even just a small or medium, let alone large size firms. And if you look at the table, if you look at medium-sized firms, there are 79% of the firms which stay medium between the years 2017 and 2018. 9% of them transition into the large size. And at the same time, 11% of the medium-sized firms become small between 2017 and 2018. And similarly, if you look at a large size also, 91% stay large, but there's some change in their demographics. They become 8% of them become medium size. And if you look at the 2021, the other side of the table, medium-sized firms, again, 69% stay medium. Around 7% of them become transition into the large size. Between these two tables, 7 to 9% of transition by the medium-sized firms into large size, is that sufficient? We don't have any literature to support, but based on the OECD study and other studies, it looks quite small compared to other countries, these transitioning of medium size into large size. And lastly, this is on the conclusion, we quickly look at the findings, which is concentration remains high, but there are positive concentration trends resulting from enforcement, digital disruption, and regulatory reforms that has enhanced competitiveness and promoted growth. However, a broader participation remains low, with MSMEs struggling to scale, threatening the inclusiveness of growth and job creation. Lessons learned: deconcentration will only arise from scaling rivals and promoting a vibrant MSME ecosystem. There's a need to dismantle barriers, both routes to market and regulation, that entrench incumbency and prevent challenger firms from thriving in the market. Distribution channels, for instance, are often hostile to MSMEs through higher fees or restricted access and preference for national chains, both online and brick-and-mortar rentals. And there are overly burdensome and restrictive regulations, including licensing and permits or even operating standards, that can perpetuate concentration and limit new entry both at national and municipality level. Disruptive entry facilitated by technology and pro-competitive regulations are shown to work in reducing concentration and intensifying competition. Examples can be drawn from the banks which have entered into the financial sector, fintech, Time Bank, and Discovery Bank. So the policy and funding should support disruptive technological entrepreneurs and promote greater inclusion in new technologies and markets. Both government policy and competition law should have increased emphasis on scaling successful entrants, as this remains the single largest bottleneck for MSME growth. This means more funding and enforcement aimed at supporting medium-sized and larger challenges that have demonstrated their capabilities. Regulatory reforms should avoid privatizing monopolies. Just to give you an example, energy reforms have resulted in reduced concentration in energy generation, while rail network reforms will do the same in transport. So these should be monitored to ensure a healthy, competitive environment. With this, I stop it here, Chair. Doris will give you the concluding remarks.
Chair, thank you so much. I think, as you hear from Dr. Govender, the Commission is proposing numerous recommendations coming out of this report. And these to be implemented and to be successful, I think, requires greater support from across government. As you know, Chair, we recently launched a regulatory review program to identify, obviously with the assistance of business, both large and small, regulatory barriers to entry or expansion of firms that would unlock more investment and growth across all sectors of the economy. To succeed, the recommendation coming out of the regulatory review program will need to be championed for implementation across government with the assistance of all stakeholders. On the market access barriers, and these are those barriers that are created by firms themselves and not government, we have focused on growing use of guidelines and other programs to encourage compliance as a complement to our enforcement work that we do. We have initiated a number of market inquiries, Chair, and these we hope to bring in competitive measures that will stimulate more investment and competitiveness in the sectors where we are introducing market inquiries. We've expanded our research and enforcement work in tech sectors aimed at promoting competitive and disruptive tech markets. This includes work on ensuring competitive AI infrastructure, such as data centers and cloud computing, where we're working with the Department of DCDT and promoting participation in AI application domestically, with work on preempting the removal of anti-competitive conduct that we are undertaking in collaboration with the BRICS countries. On the critical reforms taking place in energy and logistics, the Commission continues to offer its expertise on how best to open these markets to effective competition to ensure supply at a low price point, as Harry has said. Chair, I think it's important to remember that this requires an all-of-government approach to achieve. The Commission cannot do it alone, and from a government point of view, we need to be sensitive to not entrench dominant suppliers, either through procurement or regulation, and we need to actively be promoting and funding the scaling of rivals to challenge those dominant suppliers. And in our view, in conclusion, Chair, competition will yield a more competitive economy and one with greater levels of investment. Chair, I thank you. If we may, Chair, we can then move to the next presentation.
Yes,
which is
we
the
can move.
matter, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.